Really crazy to have to wash your hands after dealing with antibacterial soap. Hey everyone, it's me, Katie-Beth again. And today we're going to be making soap. Now I've hesitated in the past to get into this because I didn't want to deal with all the melting of fat and all of that stuff. It's just way too much work. And I once watched a video where someone took a bunch of pre-made bars of soap and microwaved them to put into a mold. And it turned out to be a complete disaster. They just like poofed up in the microwave and had a weird texture. But that made me think, why can't you just melt them like you do candles? So my plan is to shave down the soap into soap bits like you do kind of with wax bits. And then put one of these little double boiler type of pots over another pot with water in it so it steams it, and then it melts the soap, and then I can pour it into a mold. Is what I'm thinking I can possibly do, but I haven't tried it yet. This will be the test. I chose Dial because it is an antibacterial soap, and I figure if you're gonna soap up, might as well get rid of the germs. It also, this white one doesn't really have a strong scent itself, so I'm hoping it'll be not scented enough that I can use these scents that I got off of Amazon. I got some All-American scents, such as, let's see. Okay, so the scents this one contains, it has campfire, orangesicle, s'mores, root beer, brownie, and apple pie. And the second one I got is Dad's. So the Dad's one has bay rum, sweet tobacco, coffee, clove, bacon, and fresh cut wood. Okay, so I'm going to get to the kitchen, shave down one of these bars, and see about melting it and pouring it into a mold and seeing how that goes. So first off, I converted a cheese grater into a soap grater by just using a cheese grater to grate some soap. And I think I got this cheese grater at Walmart. It has a little container underneath to catch whatever you're grating, which is really cool. And I'm just gonna fast forward through this a bit because it takes a while to grate this entire thing of soap. So when I was done grating it, I put it in a larger container just in case I wanted to add more later. So I start off with just adding a little to my little broiler saucepan, put it over the pot, and start to let it cook, boil, double boil, broil. I'm not sure what it is. So initially, I thought the soap would melt like wax does, where it just starts melting when it hits heat. This was not the case. This is about 15 minutes later. It's still not melting at all. It is soft in texture, but it's not at all melting. So I was pretty sure this entire experiment was going to be a flat-out failure until I accidentally got some water splashed in there. This is actually, I purposefully put water in. But water is what actually helped the soap melt. As you can see, I have a little too much water in here, but I really had no idea what I was doing. But it melted the soap. So goal achieved there. Pat on the back. Initially, I thought that I would need a release agent to put in my mold so that it would come out more easily. It doesn't need it at all, just for your future reference. Soap is slippery enough that it just pops right out of the mold anyhow. Now, because I have too much water in this mixture, I decided to try and strain it out, which kind of worked for a first try. Not the worst I could have done. I'm just mixing it up and then deciding what I want to add into it. I decided on the sweet tobacco smell. I actually really like this smell, but I also like the smell of cigars, so take it as you will. I also decided that I wanted to add some flowers in there, dried up flowers, for some texture and visual appeal, and some more scent. And now I just try to put it into the molds, and I'm gonna fast forward through this a little more just to make it easier to watch. So eventually this is what I came up with. I tried to squeeze as much of the water out of them as I could. The bowl is kind of messy, but it's soap, so not the worst to clean ever. And then I put it in the freezer because I'm impatient and I wanted them to cool really quickly. And this is how they came out. And again, they just popped out. I had the releasing agent in there, but it was unnecessary. These are the skulls and bones I came up with. Let me give you a little closer look here. A little uglier up close, but they're so ugly they're cute. And also because they felt like they were still really moist, I thought maybe I'd put them in the dehydrator for a while. I didn't leave it in there for 10 hours. That was just a starting point. I went with like 1 hour, 2 hours at first. But when I opened them up and felt them, I thought they'd be hard and dried out, but they were squishy. Like super squishy and melty, which I was not expecting. So after I got more confidence from that first batch, I tried it again with a little different method. Instead of the double broiler, I'm using that pot. I also had decided to use the clove scent, which I love, and crush up actual cloves to put in it, so you have a little bit of the scratchy to get into pores, and another thing to add more scent in it. So I added that in with the water. As you can see, I kind of got it on the outside water too, but it seemed to mix pretty well. So I felt okay with this mix. It has less water in than the first one did. So I really wanted to make sure I got the soap mix really in there, into all the crevices, so there wouldn't be any empty spots or air bubbles. I also tried to get it as flat as I could on the top with the spoon, but the soap already seemed to be starting to harden, which was a little unusual, but meh. I also used these skills that I perfected at 7-Eleven with ices or slushies. Just packing them down on the counter to get everything packed in there. I feel like that really helped get everything in the crevices. And then I'm lazy, so I also put it in the fridge to let it dry. So this is the pot. I used a candle making pot inside a pot for this way, and it turned out not to be the best way because the handle on this pot, when it's weighed down, kind of curves in under the pot where there are flames. So I kept smelling melted plastic, and it was because of this handle. So I changed methods and went to using the pot as the bottom pot for the double broiler. So I put water in there and then put it on the stove. And then see, when I light up the flame now, the handle stays far enough from the flame that it's not burning and giving me that awful smell. So these are the finished product skull soaps. I was super happy with them and wanted to start selling them at the pop-up craft fairs that Kayla and I are doing now. But I've noticed a problem. When I first made the soap, they were really soft and really slippery, so I left them out to dry so that they'd harden more, so when you touched it, your fingers wouldn't just smush in and you wouldn't feel like you were getting soap slime on you. Like with them being dry now, you can kind of rub them and it's fine. It just feels like dried soap. So this one has been sitting out for about 3 weeks, this one about 2 weeks, and this one a little less than a week. I feel like you can also see that the water has evaporated out of them. The one that's been sitting out the longest is the tiniest. And it was super evident when I first took this one out of the mold, the size difference. And I don't know if I just cooked it a little more. This one I feel like I cooked longer, so maybe more of the water already evaporated. You can see this one is kind of more soap looking, and this one is a little more crinkled looking because I feel like this one was already drier when I shoved it in the mold. So maybe it just had less water to evaporate, and that's why it's not as tiny. Or in another 2 weeks, maybe this one will be as small as that one. So the problem that I've noticed, especially on the one that's been drying the longest, And also the reason why I don't want to take these to market quite yet is that I feel like they're growing mold. Which is absolutely bizarre since the base of the soap is an antibacterial soap, which should kill any type of bacteria. But there's like this white powder. You can kind of see it. Oh, sorry, my nails are... Ugh. So you can see like it's growing a white powder in here. And here on the side of his gums. It's like a fuzzy mold, maybe? And kind of inside his eye socket. And I thought maybe it was just this batch, but this was the first one I made. Looking into the second batch, but looking at the second batch, you can see in the middle of his nose, if I can get it focused, he's starting to grow a little mold in there, or soap. I read somewhere online it could be soap ash, but I don't understand what that is since I didn't use any particular thing. See, this is the second batch. It looks like it's growing a little in there. Maybe it's just dried soap. Let me see if I can scratch this piece off. It looks like a little piece of fuzz. Huh. But it's scratched off. So I don't think it's just the white soap. Here's another piece. Right in there. Part of that looks like soap, but it looks like a fuzzy mold. And it just scratched right off. So I don't think it's part of the soap. I need to go wash my hands now. I feel gross about this. Really crazy to have to wash your hands after dealing with antibacterial soap. So the one that I made about a week ago, maybe a little less, doesn't seem to have any distinct mold on it, but in the eye sockets it kind of looks dusty, which could just be dust from me leaving it out. Or it could just be, you can see there's kind of a white residue, a mold growing. So I obviously don't want to give these out to anyone, or worse, try to sell them, if there could be such a great defect as mold growing on soap. Has anyone else experienced this problem or maybe know what it's about? I tried looking it up online, but I couldn't really, the only thing I could find was people saying that it could be soap ash. But since I used an antibacterial as the base and the only thing I added were some cloves, maybe the cloves are molding? Now that I'm looking at it, the mold does seem to be most prevalent on the dark spots, which are the cloves. See the top of his head? He's got a little white spot on that dark spot there. So perhaps it is the cloves molding, which could possibly mean if I cut this open, there could be mold throughout it since there's cloves throughout it. Here's another one. Kind of see that white spot in the middle of the dark spot, which is a clove. So does anyone know, is it just the cloves, natural items that I put in the soap, that is making it mold, or is it the soap itself? And since the base is mostly an antibacterial soap, even if the cloves were molding, shouldn't the soap kill that? Like the cloves are just bathed in antibacterial soap. What is happening? The last batch that I did does not have cloves in it, and it does not have any big mold spots, but possibly because it's just not old enough to. But possibly these dusty spots are not dust, they could be mold growing, or it's just dust from leaving them out to dry in California, which is a desert, and dust everywhere. I just really can't decide, so if anyone knows, please tell me in the comments below. Or if you think my method of making soap was just completely bonkers, feel free to tell me that also. It was a little bonkers. I tend to get ideas that I just assume will work, and they don't always. This is one of those where it almost worked, and maybe did, maybe almost didn't. I guess I'll kind of leave these out and keep monitoring them in another week or two and see what else happens. Again, I really wanted to be able to give some of these away, and I do not feel comfortable with it just because I do not know if it'll be safe. They do smell really good, like the clove soaps do smell heavenly. I know this project was not the best success in the world. I don't want to call it a complete failure because these are still pretty cute, but I can't call it a success since I don't know if I can use them yet. Again, thanks for being here on this journey with me as I dive into crafts and tinkering and seeing what works and what doesn't. I hope any crafts you're diving into right now are working out a little better than this. Now to the closure. If you're already a subscriber, thank you so much. And if not, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button down below. Today's crafting mishap was a pretty good indicator of what kind of thing you're going to get on this show. I do a lot of crafts, testing out different products, seeing what works and what doesn't. Sometimes I do adventures, sometimes I do cooking, and lately I'm getting into 3D printing. If any of that sounds interesting to you, please hit that subscribe button down below. Again, thanks for being here on this crafting journey with me today, and have a great rest of your day. So they just fall right out of the box once you open it. Beware of that. So these are some interesting sounding scents. I have not smelled them yet. While I'm here, let's just go ahead and smell one real quick. It's fresh cut wood. Does have a, yeah, actually. It does have that fresh cut wood smell like when you're at Home Depot and just cutting through some wood.